morning, everybody. Good morning, Instagram. Good morning, Facebook. And good morning, YouTube. Oh, my goodness. Good morning. Happy Thursday, everybody. I see people checking in from Oregon and California and Oklahoma and Ohio. Welcome, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us. It is nice to be back. I enjoyed a week-long conference in Hawaii, which sounds exciting. But oh my gosh, guys, Hawaii is a long ways away to get to a rock that floats in the ocean. So doesn't matter. It was beautiful. It was 80 degrees and I still had tons and tons of fun. And so the team did a fantastic job here. We're going to get in a minute to everything that they accomplished. They absolutely crushed it the week that I was gone. And I cannot begin to thank them enough for all the work they've done. Good morning, Jana. Nice to see you this morning. All right. And of course, it's St. Louis. And I feel like we're in permanent spring now. Of course, probably going to get snow next week. Who knows? But yeah, it's one of those days where you wear the jacket in the morning and then you leave it at work and you go home and then you forget you need it the next morning. So welcome to St. Louis seasons. Okay, we're going to start like we do every show with questions that have been submitted by you guys. So go to cottoncuts.com/live to submit a question for next week. These are here on the table when I get here. I could be stumped. I have no idea where this is going to take us. That's always kind of the fun way to start out. Good morning, Judy from Georgia. All right, happy birthday, Danelle. It looks like it's your birthday. And good morning from Minnesota, Kim. All right, so our first question comes to us from Vanessa Dixon from Jackson, Mississippi. Vanessa asks, I want to experiment with non-traditional quilt shapes like hexagons and curves. What's the best way to approach these? Okay. All right, so Vanessa, I think I'm going to take your question in two separate ways. So let's start first with the hexagons, and then we'll talk about the curves. So when you start getting into non-linear geometric shapes, such as hexagons, any sort of polygon more than a square or a triangle, then you need to start looking at, there's a couple different things you can do. So there are patterns and trips and shortcuts out there that will show you how to sew those shapes without any Y seams. So if you want to use your traditional machine and you want to sew a polygon, there are patterns out there that actually take the hexagon and break it down into shapes that can actually be sewn straight stitching. Sheila Christensen, our pattern designer for our puzzle mystery quilts, has a whole book written where she takes complex shapes, complex polygons, and breaks them down so they can all be straight stitched. If you want to keep the hexagon whole or you want to keep the polygon whole without cutting it into parts to make it easier to sew, you're going to have to learn how to do a Y seam. There are tons of videos out there about Y seams. I think they're a little daunting for people because you think it's not just a straight stitch, but it completely is. You're basically just sewing one seam, stopping a little bit, sewing another seam, and then you sew the two together. It's not hard. It just takes practice like everything. The first time you do it, it's hard. The second time, it's easier. Y seams are your friends if you want to use your machine to be able to sew a polygon. Now, if you want to not use your machine, EPP, English paper piecing, is a fantastic way to stitch complex shapes. I do EPP all the time. I like to break out of the square and triangle. And so I use hexagons and I use triangles that are not right angles. And so I use English paper piecing all the time. There are tons of patterns out there to help you break out of the rectangle triangles that we get stuck into. And then, of course, there's also foundation paper piecing, which we're going to talk about in a little bit when I start talking about patterns as an alternate way to get complex geometries into your project. So all those ways are ways to kind of branch out. If you're a beginning quilter and you're super comfortable in the squares and triangles, but you want to try something differently, there's a lot of tutorials out there to help you with complex polygons like a hexagon or a trapezoid. Trapezoids are fun. Diamonds are my least favorite because those are a lot of biased edges and they tend to get wonky and misshapen. But again, there's tutorials on Facebook and on YouTube that'll help you get through all of that. All right. Now your second question, curves. So I'm actually going to talk about curves when I talk about patterns in a little bit here. But I was afraid to sew curves. And it's because, once you start sewing in an angle, I thought I would have to be, precise and it'd be a problem. Latifa Safir came to our quilt guild here in St. Louis, and she taught a class on how to sew curves and how to sew her clamshells. And I signed up for the class. I got all my parts and pieces cut out, and then it had to be rescheduled, and I couldn't take it. But what I actually found is her YouTube videos are fantastic. And when you're sewing a curve, you have to flip your mind a little bit. You're not putting right sides together and sewing around and outside. You're actually taking one piece, you're turning it upside down, and then you're making the seams connect. It is very hard to describe. But if you watch Latifa's videos, they make sewing those curves really darn easy. It is just a different way of thinking of putting fabric through your machine. But if you do it correctly, it actually pops together. And I did my clamshell quilt in a retreat in a day. Once I got it down, I was like, oh, this, what have I been slowing down for? Why haven't I done this sooner? It was so easy to do. And I had my quilt together and not a problem at all. All right. Hello, Tishua. It's good to see you after you've been gone for a while. I hope everything's all good with your home. Let's see here. Super busy making things for a grandbaby and a niece. Diamonds scare me. Yes, Tishua, diamonds scare me too. That's when I learned the value of starch. I always thought starch was something that you did on business shirts, that you didn't actually need to use it in fabric. And once I started doing a lot of bias edge cuts, starch became my friend. But make sure if you use starch, this is my one like major tip and trick. If you starch anything, make sure you starch it all at the same stage. So in a project. So if you're starching, you have to either starch it all in yardage, or you have to starch it all after you cut it, or you starch it all after you sew it. But make sure you're starching every single piece of fabric you're using at the same stage. Otherwise, it's going to be wonkier than it would have been if you had not used starch. All right. Let's see here. Fantastic question, Vanessa. If you guys have any tips or trips or people who you like Latifa inspired me for curves and Sheila for straight piecing on complex shapes, drop them in the comments. Give Vanessa some tips and tricks on how you got past that first step of doing it and then it became easy for you. All right, our next question comes to us from Ginger Foster. Ginger's from Houston, Texas. Oh, we go to Houston every October for a quilt market. Hopefully we'll see you. All right. Can you recommend any great storage solutions for fabric scraps? My stash is getting out of control. All right. We talked a lot about fabric scraps on previous shows. And so I'm going to push this one back to you guys, but then I'm going to put in my favorite advocate for my idealized fabric scrap storage method. So who do you guys follow? What method do you guys do? How do you store your scraps? Do you have rules for if it's bigger than it's here, if it's smaller than it gets donated? How do you guys think about what scraps are too big and too small or too small to keep? I think that's kind of my biggest thing is I find value in everything. And so I keep every little bit. From an aspirational perspective, I love Bonnie Hunter's scrap storage system. So she takes scraps that are left over at the end of a project, and then she cuts them into predefined shapes. So she has all these that are like 2.5-inch strips, 3.5-inch strips by different lengths. She cuts squares and she cuts triangles. So she takes her scraps and she actually cuts them into shapes, and then she organizes them by color. And so when she wants to go ahead and add a piece of fabric or add a border, she just grabs that shape that's already pre-cut by dimension, sorted by color, and she uses that to create her projects. That is totally aspirational to me, guys. But I think that's a fantastic method is, oftentimes we get in this, and Ginger, I hope you're not here, but I definitely am, where I finish a project and I have scraps and they just kind of go into a tub. And I deal with this problem later and I just kind of shove them to the side. And then eventually I have to pay my kids to sort them by color, fold them, and put them in the boxes that I have. But I think if I got to a place where as I created the scrap, I knew how I was going to cut it for my next project, I feel like that would be a game changer. And so do you guys have any suggestions for how you organize your scraps? I feel like definitely the, put it in a box and put it in the corner is a method. It is real. It is legit. And I guarantee you there's people that are watching this that definitely do that. And there's also people that are super lean and mean. And once they're done with the project, those fabrics get donated, they get given away. And, that's super aspirational true. So you don't have any scraps to have to deal with a scrap management solution. I would love to hear what you guys do and think on this. Fantastic question, Ginger. Thank you so much for submitting your question. All right. Don't forget, if you've got a question, go to cottoncuts.com/live, submit it, and we will answer that question live on the show next week. Marlene Hinton is saying she's sorted by both shape and size and color, or squares and strips, if they are read in the same box. Yes, I feel like that's, I am in the this is my box of all of my red fabrics, and that's actually been helpful for me. I want to get to the point of where I'm actually cutting them down, but I feel like that's kind of a when I'm retired category question. All right. Don't forget, most of you guys are fantastic about this. If you're watching us for the first time, to be sure to give StreamYard your permissions so that way we can see your name. So I can say, for example, Catherine is talking about she doesn't like scraps hanging around. And so she makes string quilts for charity and she never has a lot. Catherine, that is super mean and efficient. And I love it. That as soon as you generate scraps, you're actually converting them into something else and donating them. So you don't have this problem. You don't have to come up with an organization. You just make a project and it's out the door. That is fantastic. All right, don't forget to stay to the end of our show. We're going to have another giveaway. We're going to give away a $25 gift card to the Cotton Cut shop by answering a super simple question. Okay, so what's happening in the shop this week? I'm going to talk about what's happening in the shop for 2 weeks because I've been gone for a while. So first, everything Floral States has left the shop. It has left the shop. And I'm gonna put a quiz into the question into the chat here. So how many yards of that royal blue fabric do you think the Cotton Cuts team had to cut for all of those Floral States borders? So I can tell you yesterday, day before when we were finishing them up, we were like, oh my God, it is like weighing down our tables. So I'm going to ask you guys, how many yards of royal blue fabric did the Cotton Cuts team have to cut in the past 2 weeks to get all those Floral States kits done? So go ahead and put your guess in, and I'll let you know if you're kind of hot, cold, or getting warmer. All right. So thankfully they are all left. We did discover there was a slight problem with Utah. You know, we did kind of rotate. Oh, Linda Wemple says 1,000,000 yards. Okay. Whew. All right. So thankfully not you. Come down. Patty Grattan, you have to go up. It is more than 350. Okay. So, you know, we did find a problem with Utah, so we're going to issue a redaction for that. There is a little bit of an error with the Utah instructions. We are going to get that done. Guys, you've got to go a lot more than where you are. If you were in the chat right now, you're at 100, 200, 300. You got to go more than that. Not 1,000,000, not 1,000,000. Thankfully, not 1,000,000. Holy cow. So I want to give you guys context, right? So when we cut these Floral State kits, I see 400 yards coming in on Instagram, 500, 1,200. Diane, you're actually kind of close at the 1,200. 2,000's too much. 760, Janet, you were in the, Teresa Thurman is the closest so far. So I'm going to call it. It was 980 yards of fabric. Okay, so I want to put that in context for you guys for the Floral States program. So it was 980 yards of fabric was cut into blue strips. So imagine laying a bolt of fabric, 10 lengths of a football field, and then for every yard, cutting it into a 2-inch strip. Okay, so let that sink in for a little bit. 10 football field lengths and cutting it into a 2-inch strip for every hash mark. So you're cutting it into 18 pieces for every hash mark. Guys, that was a lot of work. Our team did a fantastic job getting those kits and making sure that those strips were cut correctly. And it was like bolts and bolts and bolts and bolts of fabric. So they did a great job. I hope you guys love and appreciate it. I cannot wait to see those finished quilts start coming up. Like I said, yeah, Deb Jean, Utah was a challenge. We just had to flip it a little bit. That was a mistake in ours. You know, after doing 50 of these, I think that was the only one where we had a pretty major mistake. And so I will take that as a win. Jana, there were 300 people that joined our Floral States program. And so there were 300 people that participated. The vast majority of people chose the on-point layout. Many people also chose the grid as well. Yeah, Lori, it would take you 2 years to cut it. I feel like I would be, if it was me by myself with my rotary cutter, 980 yards would probably take me to my retirement, the aforementioned retirement. So, all right. So those are out the door. So we can celebrate that a little bit. I cannot wait to see these guys come together for you guys. I know we've been getting feedback. People liked the sampler. They liked that every month I learn a new skill and a new way of looking at a block. And so we're going to keep on the lookout and see if we can find another project like that because I liked it. I liked the fact that we took something that a traditional quilt shop wouldn't do, and we kind of put it in a Cotton Cuts fashion. And I know it kind of finished a little wonky as we got to the end with some supply chain stuff and some delays, but I think overall the project is amazing. The finished quilt is going to be great, and I cannot wait to see them all come together. All right, so Tim Holtz is next on the list. So Tim Holtz, our yellow and neutrals. I'm looking at the rack. I think they have some triangles that they're going to have done here. They're going to start kitting. Those little guys are going to start leaving here today. And then Tim Holtz, I see no reason why it's going to be delayed from here on out. We got an email from the manufacturer. They are on track. They are prepared to ship us. Our next color is going to be here next week-ish. And so we should be able to get that project back on track. And I cannot wait for that to start coming together. Next week, I will have the pillows in the yellow and the neutral sewn to show you guys. You can see what those colors look like. And then it's green. And all of the blocks are already up on the website. So you guys can see what's coming. Those fabrics are, and I know it's an acquired taste. And I appreciate everyone stepping outside your comfort zone and trying these fabrics when they're not normally your jam. I think when I walk into a quilt shop, I see it. I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to make with that. It's really cool. It's got a vintage aesthetic to it. But I like that this project is pushing people outside your comfort zones to try fabrics that you might not normally like. Or if you're a Tim Holtz fangirl and this is your thing, then I am loving that you are loving this program. Okay. Next up, so Wild West. It seems like we've talked about so many things but Wild West. And Wild West is kind of that sleeper quilt that just kind of keeps just chugging in the background. Everything keeps going on time. Wild West is coming to an end, you guys. That reveal is coming up in 2 short weeks. You guys have 2 weeks to get all your clues caught up, and that reveal is coming. It is going to be on Friday, April 25th at 1 o'clock Central Time. We've got surprises, we've got guests, we've got quilts to show you guys. 2 weeks, Wild West, 2 weeks. I cannot believe that this project is ending. So we're going to start getting those backing kits and those border kits out to you guys so that way you can get on those quilts. So 2 weeks until Wild West big reveal. And of course there'll be customs because Paula does that and that's what we do. Don't forget as well, Flyaway. Flyaway, it feels like it's just starting. And we've already completed clue 3. So all the Flyaway signups have ended. And so with that, we're going to start talking about our next 10-month mystery quilt, which is called Under the Sea. And so all of those orders have gone in. I am working with our suppliers because, guys, I want to make sure that we can hold the pricing on the puzzle mystery quilts at least one last time. Obviously, there's a lot of economic uncertainty out there. And we have a really good dialogue with our suppliers as to what's going on. Thankfully, in the fabric space, because of the way the locations of the factories and because where it's printed, the original round of tariffs would only impact 108 wide backs, which impacts some of our stuff, but not all of our stuff. And so we are on top of this. We got our orders in. We're going to try and hold the pricing for that puzzle mystery quilt as best we can. I know there's a lot of uncertainty in the world and anything can change, but I do want to share with you guys, it is important to us that we maintain the value of the program and also make sure that everyone's able to participate. We want as many people to participate as possible. All right. And so then with that, so Under the Sea. And so that is coming on May 30th. Make sure you guys mark your calendars, 7 a.m. As it always is, like we're rinsing and repeating. It always comes the last Friday in May. Now, if you are a Wild West detective, you will get a day early signups. So check your email to make sure you go to the right website, make sure you're on top of that. And then also, since Floral States was kind of took a little deviation, those Floral States detectives are going to get an early day access as well. So check your emails as well to sign up for the Under the Sea mystery. All right, so let me take a look and see. What time zone? Cynthia, that's a fantastic question. Everything for us is Central Time Zone. So 7 a.m. Central, and May will be daylight, so Central Daylight Time. Let's see here. Rachel's all caught up on her flyaway. That's fantastic. All right. Where am I at? Oh, this is our first month of platinum. You guys, our first platinum shipments are shipping out today. So our platinum membership is the membership you sign up, and you get to pick what subscription box we send to you that month. So it's Java, Chroma, Chroma Super Pop, Modern Maker, or Classic. And so you tell us what you want. And so those people that wanted Java and those people that wanted Chroma, those are going out the door today. I cannot wait for you guys to get that. And then let us know. And we love to see your selections and give us the feedback and how much you like it. Don't forget Cuddle books are shipping as well. And so we have 3 new books this month. I think I have 2 here to show you. So the first one is called Sweet Dreams Little One. And so all of our Cuddle books, we pick 3 titles each month, and then you get to pick which one you want. So that way, if you've got a kid in your life that loves cars and trucks, you can do that. If you've got a kid that likes animals and farm animals, if you've got a kid that just likes love and snuggling. And so these are the books for them. We give you the little ribbons and the little crinkles so that way you can make the extensions. But one of the books this month is Sweet Dreams Little One. And it's this cute little story about a baby elephant going to sleep and all the little animals in their nests as they're snuggling down for bedtime. And then the next one is a little stinker. And so I like this was like cute little like skunk tail hanging out over here. And yeah, it's a cute little like, look at this little skunk, right? Like the illustrations in these books are just joy. Dominic made these books for his cousins for Christmas, and we get pictures all the time of them reading these books with their parents. It is fantastic. So I see some questions. Let's see here. So the first question, has Flyaway shipped yet? So Flyaway Clue 3 shipped last Friday. It ships the first Friday of every month. And on the inside of your book, there's a schedule of when it ships and when it charges. Let's see here. Sweet Anne is asking, do you get to see the fabrics in each kit when you choose for platinum? So the way platinum works is you sign up for platinum, and on the first of the month, you receive a sneak peek of what each of the items are. So we'll actually show you what the Java bundle is. We will show you the Chroma thread. We will show you what the Modern Maker collection is, and we will show you what the classic collections are. And then you get to pick which one you want. So say, for example, you really like the Java. You would simply click the Java button, and that's what we send you in that month. When you sign up, we ask you for a default. So say, for example, you're busy, you're traveling, you don't get the email. We want to make sure that you're going to get a delivery that month. And so we ask you for your default. I think we only had maybe one person this month we didn't hear from. But in that case, if we don't hear from you, we're going to ship you the default because life happens, things get busy, and we want to make sure you don't miss out. So you will get to see the collections and be able to pick which one you want. Let's see here. Catherine is saying she loves the idea of platinum, but she has serious FOMO. And if she doesn't get a regular box, what if it just couldn't live without? I know there's always the like, you can always, if you get that platinum email and you have to pick just one, but you really like another, you can always order a one-time box. So we have non-subscriptions of all of these on our website. So you can get a one-time Java, you can get a one-time Chroma, you can get a one-time Classic or a one-time Modern Maker if you want just that month's box. So that's also another thing with Platinum is since you're getting a sneak peek of everything all in one email, you can pick one and then you can get a one-time or the other. We will not stop you from that, Catherine. That is a fantastic idea. Let's see here. Little Stinker was adorable. Let's see here. And Jana's asking, will you be doing the mini mystery on the 31st? Okay. So let's talk about Mystery 5.0 because I'm supposed to talk about it in a couple bullets. We might as well just bring it right here. Okay, so Mystery 5.0. So we did Mystery 5.0 in March. That was our test case for a new way of doing the mystery. So we have our puzzle mystery quilts. Those are still going to be 10 months long. Those are still going to be one clue a month. It's going to get either emailed to you or sent to you, and you can participate, and then we'll do big reveals. But we received feedback that folks liked the idea of pre-cut, but they wanted something a little faster. They wanted a shorter project. They're an instant gratification book, which I get. I love it. Like now. And so we found the partners at Mystery 5.0, which is what we tested in March. It's a new way of doing a mystery. It's a new way of designing clues. It's not done by Sheila. It's done by a different team of designers. And so that's what we tested in March. So that sign up will happen in July. And so what'll happen is we will have 1 month to sign up, 1 month for you to get your kits. The program will start in August and it'll run for 6 weeks with a reveal in September. So it's on a slightly different timeline than our puzzle mystery quilts, which is great. In those cases, we are going to have those kits pre-made, right? This is too short of a program for us to make them on a rolling basis. So the kits are going to be pre-made. When you order it on the website, it's going to be shipped to you. But that also means when it's sold out, it's sold out. We can't go back and make them again. Our production schedule won't let us do that. So when they're going to be boxed kits and our colorways. Now, there's lots of shops participating in this program. We're the only ones doing everything pre-cut. But if, for example, you can't buy your kit from us, you could definitely go to another shop and you can purchase a kit from them and still participate with the Cotton Cuts team. There will also be a shop your stash option, just like we had in March, where you'll have to pay. We're gonna come up with the money that you have to pay in order to get the patterns. But we will give you the fabric requirements and tell you how to cut it to be able to join this program. I'm going to tell you guys for this first one, you're probably going to want to do a pre-cut version. It's a lot of strips. And so in order to get it to come out correctly, but you can definitely shop your stash. You can definitely be economical. That is not a problem at all. And we will give you the cutting instructions just like we did for the Mystery 5.0 program. So that, Jana, timeline on that, it starts in July, start shipping in July. The program starts in August, and then the reveal happens in September. And I am being handed a note, which means I've probably said the mini mystery on May 31st. Okay. Sorry, Jana. So then to answer your other question, so the Mystery 5.0 group is doing a second mini mystery. We are not participating in that one. So that was an optional, shops can participate. We feel like our folks got a good sense for what this program actually is in March. And looking at our team, I want to make sure that we continue to deliver on time. And so we are going to be skipping the second mini mystery in May, and we're going to be going directly to the full mini mystery 5.0 in July. Let's see here. So Lori's asking a question about getting one paycheck on the 3rd. I'm going to have Paula help you and answer that question. Let's see. So Terry says, you may have said this already. Will the mini mystery only be on Facebook? Okay. So we did the mini mystery in our Facebook group, and that was a fantastic, I loved that day so much. And we dropped a clue every 20 minutes and you guys got to sew and post your clues. And it was awesome. So it was not intentionally, is not and designed for the future of Mystery 50 to be done that way. But I liked so many elements of that. I think we're going to try and integrate that when it comes to the next one. So the clues will drop weekly. And what we'll probably do is we'll probably do a sew in on Saturday where we put out here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3. And then that way everyone can sew together, everyone can gather together, and everyone can see everyone's progress. So we're still investigating ways to do that while still being in the Mystery 50 program. But I did like all the community that came together. I liked seeing everyone's creations. And I'm a big person, like I need that group in order to be able to get it done. And so I feel like if we get everyone in the same place at the same time, or as many people as can participate, our chances of finishing the 6-week quilt are astronomically higher. And so our team is looking at that. Be on the lookout for that coming in August when the program actually starts. Okay. So while we're still talking about Mystery 50, the pattern for that Star Bright mini mystery, the one we did in March, we have a special surprise. And so we're allowed to give that pattern away for free, the non-mystery version of that pattern. So like if you were to go into a quilt shop and buy that pattern and do sew it together like the patterns I'm about to show you, we are hosting that for free on our website right now. So if you go to cottoncuts.com/mystery50, Paula has it on the screen now. You can, for the next 48 hours, get the non-mystery version of that pattern for free as a thank you. As a thank you for trying this with us, as a thank you for, going along on the ride and the adventure, you can get that pattern. Now you can also get the mystery versions in the Facebook group at any time, but this is the polished version if you were walking to a quilt store and you wanted to make that. I have loved seeing the number of people that have taken the block and modified it or made multiple versions of it and already made a quilt top. You guys continue to inspire and amaze me. All right. Let's see here. Next week, we're going to talk about our Earth Day challenge. Every year for Earth Day, we always do a challenge. And so next week, we're going to be talking about that on the show, which is fun and fantastic and amazing. All right. So let's talk about today's topic. So Paul and I were thinking, what kind of questions do our quilters have that we can help them address and help make them more comfortable going into a quilt shop and, branching out. I know there's a lot of beginning quilters that do our puzzle mystery quilts, and that's their first kind of quilting adventure. And so where do you go from there? So today we want to demystify quilt patterns for everybody. And so what I want to do is talk about kind of what makes a good quilt pattern and what makes a challenging quilt pattern. And so I'm going to start first by asking you guys a question in the comments. What do you guys value most in a good quilt pattern? Right? So if you're in a shop and you see a quilt pattern, what do you value most about it? What is the most important thing that it has to have for you to be successful in making it? And so go ahead and put those in the comments. We'll come back to those as those come in. But when we're talking about quilt patterns, I have a whole bunch of different examples here. And so I'm going to show you kind of the gambit of what a quilt pattern should look like and could look like. And so there's some key components, they must have in order for it to be good. And some of you guys are putting these in the comments. So some key components are, it has to have a clear title, right? It has to be titled. Kind of seems basic. And it has to tell you what the difficulty level is. And I think, I take for granted once I get past a certain point, I think I can probably learn and pick up on anything. But starting out, having that difficulty level is so important. I think it's missed over by more seasoned and experienced quilters. But if you're starting out, knowing the difficulty level ahead of time is super valuable. I'm seeing a lot of good diagrams, good pressing instructions, a lot of seam nesting, multiple sizes. Another key component is accurate fabric requirements. I've been burned by this, guys. Hey, you need 1/3 of a yard. And then all of a sudden, just kidding, no, you need 1/2 a yard. And then you have to go find the fabric that you bought on this trip to Hawaii, right? And so that's definitely bitten me before. Well-explained cutting instructions. And so I feel like Catherine just put good cutting instructions in hers as well. And so when it comes down to cutting these patterns, I feel like some people become too efficient and too perfect and don't allow for any errors. I know I've been there and I fully intend to cut that 3.5 inches and I accidentally cut it 3.25. Ugh, right? And now the person who was super lean in their pattern and cutting instructions doesn't allow for any errors. And I feel like that's also, it needs to make sure that you have them, they're well-explained cutting instructions. A lot of you have put diagrams and visual aids. and finishing details. I think that also gets skipped over and taken for granted. Like, we're just going to wave our magic wands and the quilt top we've made has become a quilt. And I would love instructions on how to actually finish the quilt. Let's see here, diagrams, pictures, and clear instructions, patterns that I can modify or adjust myself. I think, Teresa, that is a fantastic. Once you get to be more experienced, I do like that if they provide it like, hey, do this times 4x and you can do bigger and better things. When it comes to modifying and adjusting, that's going to come into one of our execution steps. And so, that is what good looks like. Now, what do we often see that's missing in patterns and pattern designs? Where do patterns fall apart? Literally, where do they fall apart? Um, Vague cutting instructions, assumptions about steps. When you're reading through it and all of a sudden it goes from here to here and you don't know how it got from here to here, it is super confusing, very challenging. Lack of step-by-step diagrams. I feel like there's also some hand waving that goes in some of these diagrams and you're just automatically expected to know how to get from here to here. This one has bitten me. Unclear fabric recommendations. When you look at a pattern and it tells you need certain number of yardage, it needs to be clear if it's directional or if it's a solid or if it has some measure of repeat in it. That would be super helpful so you don't get bit, especially if you're doing a pattern that requires a certain pattern or a certain geometric element. Those unclear fabric recommendations can definitely bite you. And missing tips for handling tricky blocks or techniques. And we talked a little bit at the top of the show with the hexagons. We're going to come back to that. So those things are super frustrating. And I'm going to be super transparent. Like, I've come across patterns and I have been very frustrated. And that's oftentimes when a pattern ends up in its not complete state. And so for you guys, have you ever abandoned a pattern halfway through, and why? What is it about that pattern that caused you to stop and abandon it halfway through? Was it a bad instruction? Was it a bad picture? Was it a bad step? Were you short fabrics? Tell us why you abandoned a certain frustrating project. All right. So now let's look at some examples of some quilt patterns. And I'm going to start with what I would call a beginner pattern. And we'll go to some of the more advanced, including the hardest pattern that I have ever seen and is in my not completed stack. Okay. So at its basic level, right? These guys, these are some of the simplest patterns that we've seen. So these are our Villa Rosa patterns, which is a fantastic family-owned company that does their own printing of patterns. These guys, these are very, very simple. These are the instructions and the pictures on the back. These give you everything you need in a simple, quick to grab format. So you'll find these most likely at the cash wrap at your quilt shop. You'll also find them in a lot of inserts. So quilt shops like ours will use these as inserts and packages just as a free bonus, as a free giveaway. And on the back, on the front of it, there's usually a very, very clear photo of what the pattern is supposed to look like. This one has the title on it. And it also, on the back, the very first thing it's going to tell you is its finishing dimensions. That's super important. I find that I will see this like, hey, this looks great. This looks awesome. How big is it? And I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I look at this and think it's going to be 30 by 30. And in this case, it's 66 by 72. That also tells me it's not square. It'd be super easy to assume this is square. The fact that it finishes 66 by 72 is not square. On the back, it tells me, you need 1/4 yard cuts or 11 fat quarters, what you need for the background and what you need for the binding. So very, very simple fabric requirements. Tishua just started this one last night. All right, Tishua can teach all of us all about it. So yes, so in this case, it's going to be simple because it's only on this card. So it's not going to tell you to get 16 different fabrics. It's not going to tell you the SKUs. It needs to be general. It'll tell you how to cut it. It'll tell you how to sew it and how to assemble it. This is very simple, guys. This I would consider is not a super beginner friendly pattern, because you have to make certain assumptions in those steps in order to be able to get to this finished pattern. Also, Tishua, I thought you said you didn't like doing diamonds. These are all actually half square triangles, which is fantastic and amazing as well. And then I think one of those underrated pieces of information that I feel like should be on every pattern is contact information for if you have an error or if you have a question. And so in this case, they have their websites. You can definitely reach out to them if you have any questions about the pattern. Having that contact information is super valuable in case you do get stuck, or in case you can't find an influencer or find a Tishua that has actually done this pattern to be able to help you along the way. Now, as we look at these patterns, right, these are made in fabrics, but it doesn't tell me what fabrics they are made in. And so if you're lucky enough and you can zoom in, you might be able to get these exact fabrics. But what I have found is, sometimes you walk into a quilt shop and that quilt is hanging there and they have the kit made and you love this quilt and you can buy all the fabrics to make the quilt, right? That's a great idea. But sometimes you get this and you don't know what these fabrics are. And so one of the best tips that I have found to actually coming up with making this and recreating it as closely as possible is to take a black and white photo of the finished quilt. So on this, take a black and white photo of this and take a black and white photo of this. And what that will show you is which fabrics are more saturated than others, because you don't know what these fabrics are. It doesn't itemize out what the SKUs are for you to go buy them online, or you might not be able to get them online because it might be from an older collection. But if you take a black and a white photo of each of your patterns, it'll tell you which is darker, which is lighter, and which is more medium. So that way, when you're selecting your fabrics, you can actually take a photo of your fabrics and then match it to the pattern and where it should go. That's very helpful if you're looking at perhaps this next pattern. So this next pattern, this is a Missouri Star pattern. In this case, taking a black and white photo of this, you can even see it on the screens here, where some colors are darker than others and some colors are lighter than others. And in those cases, that'll help you with your fabric placement. In this case, it's meant to be scrappy, but there could be more complex patterns like what we're about to look at, where taking that photo will help you with your fabric choice. So this is Missouri Star. Missouri Star does a ton of quick and easy patterns like this. On the back, it'll tell you what book it came out of. It'll tell you what fabrics they actually used in the quilts, which is good, but also time sensitive. As we know, fabrics are released on a quarterly basis. You might not be able to find those fabrics. That is absolutely a-okay. It tells you what the finished quilt size is. It tells you the fabric you're going to need. It tells you your border fabrics, which is a fantastic tip. Not all of them include border, binding, and backing. And so patterns are oftentimes included in these plastic sleeves because they don't want you to, in the store, do what I'm doing. They don't want you to be able to open it up and then take a photo of the pattern and be able to steal the pattern. That's why they come in these plastic sleeves. It also prevents damage on its way to the quilt shop as well, but they want them in the sleeves because they don't want you to be able to open them. And so this is a very simple booklet. It has cutting instructions. Missouri Star patterns are meant for beginning quilters. They have a lot of words in them. If you notice, there's a lot more words than there are photos. Depending on your learning style, that might be good for you. And I'm going to show you like the ultimate word blog post type of pattern here in a minute. But you can see it's got a very pretty finished design. It gives you all the steps and all the instructions. I would say this is kind of textbook for what a basic pattern should look like and what you should be able to expect in it going forward. All right. Next, I'm going to show you the ultimate in patterns where planning is important and patterns where you have to read through all of it in order to be most successful. And so I'll tell the story. I took a shop class in middle school once, and the teacher gave us a test, and it had 75 questions on it. He said, you have 6 minutes to take this test. And 75 questions, 6 minutes, everyone starts panicking. The very first prompt is read through this test before answering any questions. And the very last question says, you only have to answer this question, write the word yes, right? And it's one of those lessons that we get so programmed into going step 1, 2, 3, and 4, that sometimes when you're taking on a more complex pattern, read through everything, see where you're going, do all the planning ahead of time, get all the things out that you're going to need. And sometimes having that roadmap of where you end will help you get there better, faster, and smoother with a lot less consternation. So I'm going to show you an Elizabeth Hartman pattern. Once we start getting into books, I know it can be daunting for people because A, it gets a little bit more expensive, and it feels like once it's in a book, it becomes very, very hard. That is not the case. Elizabeth Hartman writes fantastic patterns with very clear instructions, and she's very clear about how to label. So she's a big fan of cutting everything up front, labeling everything that you cut, and then start to sew it together. And so if you're very deliberate and intentional about marking and making sure you label everything, they go together so easily. And so in this pattern, I know when you look at this, you're like, oh my God, this is going to take me 17 years to get this pattern done. A, she makes the cutting instructions very, very easy and everything very, very clear. Now, if you look at this pattern, I have made the hedgehog in this pattern before. So I have made, let me see if I can find it, this hedgehog. And so what I did is I just went to that section of this book, I cut out the hedgehog piece and I put it on a mini quilt, right? And I made 4 of them. And so that's something when you're looking at these patterns, you can make them as they're shown, but you can also scale them down. So say you like just this little forest creature bit, you can make those forest creatures. You don't have to make the whole thing. Or you can get a book like this and make the owl ones, make the fox ones. Yeah, it looks like Tisha has done the fox. Jana's done this one in a baby size. It worked out great. I think if with these instructions, and I especially love the color, right? So here you're going to get all the instructions in the color, and she groups them. So that way, you know, in the pattern, it's not just fabric A, B, C, D, all the way through to the end. You're actually grouped. And so when she writes the instruction, she tells you to bring these groups together, how to cut it, how to label it, and then look. And so here's how you make that fancy fox block. And so because you've labeled everything clearly, you can follow her instructions, you can trim as you go, and before you know it, you've got your fox face, and then here's your bunny face. And so this seems super daunting, and I get it. If I was a beginning quilter and I picked this up, it would seem super complex and you would never be able to do this. But the instructions, because they are well done, because they are labeled, and because they are clear, you know that this is something that you can actually sew and make together. Now, in the opposite end of the spectrum, not that this is unclear and not that this is hard, I have done a lot of Bonnie Hunter mystery quilts. And so Bonnie Hunter is a prose person. She likes to do blogs. And so she likes to write a lot of words. If you notice in this pattern, there's no cutting instructions. There's no table at the beginning that tells you this is the cutting instructions that you need. There's no cut everything at once and then sew it together. She is way more into a narrative teaching style, which is fantastic for a classroom teacher, right? She is going to give you background and make sure that you understand and make sure that you internalize, and then are able to cut and sew and pick up tricks along the way. So I want to be clear, this is not my learning style. I'm an engineer. Give me a table, tell me to cut it, and you let me sew it. However, by stepping outside my comfort zone and trying a different way of looking at a pattern, I have learned so much from this text that I have been able to leverage into other projects that I've made. And by taking the time to slow down and read, I have actually learned more than if it's just cut, 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 sew, sew, sew. And so with me, I've actually had to, another tip and trick is to like get a pen and highlight. And so I've actually had to highlight, like read 4 paragraphs. Okay, what do I actually need to do? I need to cut 4 of this and cut 6 of that. But this is actually fantastic for a beginning quilter. And I know Bonnie Hunter can be daunting when you see her finished quilt. But for a beginner who wants to actually know and understand what you're doing versus the expectation that you just learn it by osmosis, Bonnie Hunter patterns are fantastic. It was a lot of fun. And I felt like I was actually being taught one-on-one by a teacher. Now, in this case, right, Elizabeth Hartman is fantastic. She's super lovely. I don't feel like she's necessarily teaching me and holding my hand when I do this. But in this case, I feel like Bonnie Hunter is sitting next to me at my sewing machine, and she's actually helping me understand and learn as I go. So I want to make sure that you're not discounting a pattern just because it doesn't have that table that you're so used to seeing in so many patterns, that there's actually a lot to be learned and a different method of delivering the content. Now, Tula Pink is a super fantastic pattern designer and a quilt designer. This is one of the first books I bought. It's her famous 100 Modern Quilt Blocks. This pattern, you walk into lots of modern quilt shops and you'll still see this hanging on the wall today. And so when I opened this book, I was expecting a traditional quilt pattern. I was expecting a cut this, sew this. And in actuality, Tula Pink was one of the first to pilot a new modern way of sewing together quilt blocks. And so in this case, this is the pattern. This is it, gang. This page will show you how to make this block. And it's literally just, here's your fabric, and it doesn't even tell you fabric A, B, or C. It just shows you a picture of the fabric, and it tells you the shapes to cut, fabric shapes to cut, fabric shapes to cut, and you're supposed to figure out on your own how to sew this together. I would not recommend this for a beginner. However, this is definitely more a modern, leaner way of learning how to sew blocks together, of actually sewing blocks together. This is super experienced. This is definitely something that if you want to make just really, really cool blocks, this is a very simplified way of doing it. We actually use this as inspiration when we came up with our color challenge program, which is something that I know a lot of you guys are familiar with. We do these color challenge blocks in all of our Cotton Cuts products. And so it's a very simple 12 by 12 block. It gives you the color and the cutting instructions here. And then we broke it down. We kind of we did a little bit of a gap between here and where the tulip pink is. And we tell you kind of for step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do this, and step 4, do this. But this is a very simplified, clean way of showing how to sew blocks together that you may encounter. And so in this case, if this is not your learning style, I'm going to encourage you to walk away. You are going to get frustrated. If you need a narrative, if you need to read the words, then I'm going to encourage you to not pick up this type of pattern. It is going to frustrate you. However, if you're a pictures person, and I see this a lot in the puzzle mystery quilt, we'll have a typo in the words and everyone's going to miss it because all they're doing is looking at the pictures and sewing the pictures. This is the type of pattern for you. If you want to see a picture, sew it, see a picture, sew it. This is your type of pattern. Look for patterns like this. Now, I know once we start getting to patterns that are in the big bags, it can be kind of scary, right? And so this is actually a foundation paper pieced pattern. And so this is a violet craft. I've made the English paper piecing, a violet craft, and foundation paper piecing. Love these. On hers, on the back, since she actually designed this fabric for hers, she included what her SKU numbers were for all of them. And she's labeled each of these. She has the colors. You could take a black and white photo of this so you could see which are more saturated, which are least saturated if you're choosing to alter and substitute the fabric. And then on the inside, she actually has all the foundation paper pieces that you're going to sew on. So if you're like me and you always want to think contingency and you want to be able to make this at a later date and time, you're going to take this to an Office Depot and you're going to copy that pattern so you can stitch it on the copy you make and then keep it whole. You know, that's definitely something that a lot of people do because you don't want to just sew it once and be done. You definitely want to be able to have the option to do it again going forward. Say you really enjoy it and you want to make it again. And so I know a lot of people, when it comes to foundation paper piecing and English paper piecing, will make copies of the patterns. Plus, it also gives you an opportunity to practice. My first foundation paper piece pattern, I had to make like 5 or 6 copies until I got confident enough to tackle something as complex as this. Now, mind you, once I got the small thing done, this was really easy because it's the same technique over and over again, just on a bigger scale. And so I feel like we oftentimes get stuck and think we only have to do small projects. In that case, quilters would only ever do coasters, right? You are capable of doing a fantastically large and beautiful quilt. Now, curves. We talked about curves at the beginning. And so I'm going to use this pattern to demonstrate something that trips up a lot of people. So I love the So Kind of Wonderful quilts. I've made many of them. I love the fleur-de-lis. I am a New Orleans person, and this is my kind of jam in this pattern. However, you want to be mindful if it's got any of these little codes on your pattern or on the back. If it's got anything on the back, make sure you're reading. Sometimes patterns are designed to only be used with specialty rulers. And so that will trip you up because if you went into the store and you grabbed this, you might be able to think, I'm going to start sewing some fleur-de-lis today. It's going to be awesome and amazing. But this pattern requires a specialty ruler. So make sure you're checking that. That is a common thing with quilt patterns is that you have to get a specialty ruler to use with them, a specialty cutting template, a specialty guide. Sometimes they come inside of it. This one does not. And so you would need to purchase that separately. You could attempt to do it without the specialty ruler. I'm not going to stop you. That's a more power to you moment. However, it will be much harder. You'll be frustrated. And this could most likely end in a not finished project. And so just be on the lookout for that. I think my favorites are the ones that recommend rulers that'll make it easier, right? Because that means I am going to buy the pattern, I will start it, I will get frustrated, and I will know what to do to solve my problem. In this case, you're definitely going to need to get these 2 rulers in order to be able to complete this fantastic pattern. Let's see here. All right, so let's see here. So the hardest quilt that I've ever seen, the hardest pattern I have ever seen is what I will call a lifetime achievement project. So this is one of those things that when you see it done, it is beautiful and it is amazing, but you know this person had to put a lot of time and effort and love into each and every stitch. And so what I am talking about is the 1863 Jane quilt, otherwise known as Dear Jane. And so this is a quilt that was made in 1863. And like with most quilts that were made during the time period, it was made from scraps and bits of fabric that were left over from other clothing projects. And this quilt is ridiculous. It has a total of 225 different blocks in it. And so when they're calculating that, it's actually each one of these is a little block, but then all of these triangles in the border are all a different block. Now, because it was made and hung, there was no pattern used to make this. This came out of Jane's mind, and it was put together. It's now beautiful and it's antique. Now, if you want to make this quilt, this is the book that has been released to show you how to make it. And that's all you got. Like, you have what the Jane block looks like, and you have what the actual finished block looks like if you want to copy it and be able to make it. Now, there are people who have gone around and have tried to deconstruct each of these blocks and provide you instructions, and you can definitely use those. I myself found someone who converted all these to foundation paper piecing. And I started, and of course, because it's a lifetime achievement project, I made it through about the first 3 rows and then had to give it up. There's a lot of applique in this. There's a lot of foundation paper piecing in this. There's a lot of curve piecing in this. This is by far the hardest. And to be clear, nowhere do you actually get cutting instructions. Here's derivations of it, right? So if you wanna do different colors and different layouts, but there's no fabric requirements. There's no cutting instructions. There's no, this is fabric A, and you put fabric A here and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance and press to the light side, press to the dark side. You are literally making it up as you go. But as you can see, they are beautiful. As Marlene said, she tried to Dear Jane, just like I did. She made a couple blocks and decided others would do such a better job. Lifetime achievement project, gang. But when it comes to patterns, like some of these things that are super beautiful and aspirational, and when you see them at a quilt show, appreciate that they're not actually made with the pattern, that these were actually people working without cutting instructions, without pressing instructions, without someone telling them fabric A is this fabric from Moda, fabric B is this fabric from Moda. And so I feel like this is where the true art from quilting comes in, is when people are able to make quilts like this with as little information as I just showed you. Okay, so that's kind of the gambit of quilt pattern designs. And so I know for experienced quilters, a lot of this is like secondhand to you. Like, you guys know this, you could give a talk similar to this, but I think for beginners, we take for granted how hard it actually is and how daunting it is when you go into a quilt shop and you find patterns, to be able to understand, are you going to be able to achieve it? Will you be successful? And what's going to trip you up? And I'm going to end with one of my favorite stories that tripped me up very recently. Was I made a Lone Star quilt, and it said it was jelly roll friendly. And so my advice that I'm going to leave everyone with is, if you see something that says friendly, it does not mean that you can use a jelly roll for it. It means it'll make it a little easier, but you are not going to have enough fabric in your jelly roll to actually make that quilt. And that Lone Star pattern was an absolute disaster for me. I ended up having to pull a bunch of fabric from my stash because the jelly roll was not enough. It could not actually make the quilt that I wanted to make. And so my caution to you is, even if you see words like that, to just be mindful and read through the entire instructions. And it could definitely be something that you might not be able to get to the end. And so are you going to continue going, or are you going to give up? Right. And so I chose to keep going. I chose to use fabric from my stash because I really wanted to make the quilts. And that's it. Okay. I'm taking a look at our list. Let's see here. Paula has, in case you're going to a website and you're shopping for patterns online, some red and green flags that you should look for. So make sure you're checking the reviews and testimonials, right? I just gave you guys a whole bunch of testimonials on some of the patterns that I have made and some of the things that I have seen and learned. But testimonials are also a great idea. Make sure you're looking at difficulty and skill level. Make sure that it matches your skill, styles, and preferences. Unless you're intentionally trying to get outside your comfort zone, then definitely push outside and be comfortable being uncomfortable. There's nothing wrong with that. And look for reputable designers and publishers. Everything I showed you today is from a reputable designer and a publisher. These are people that have been doing this for a long time. I think if you start pulling up patterns that look like they were handwritten and in pen, there's probably value in that, but you need to make sure that you're aware that there is some measure of risk in what you are doing, and that it might or might not work out at the end of the day. And you need to make sure you're okay with that before you start. Otherwise, you're going to get super frustrated when you're halfway through. And don't forget to experiment and enjoy the process. Okay. So thank you guys for hanging with me until the end. So find this video on YouTube, Facebook, and on Instagram and answer this question. If you could design your dream quilt pattern, what would you name it? That's the very first place we started, right? Is so you have to have a name for your quilt in order for it to be kind of successful. So if you could design your dream quilt pattern, what would you name it? That kind of dovetails into our mystery for clue 3. And so I love it. So go ahead and find this video. We will pick one lucky person to win a $25 Cotton Cuts gift card. So go ahead, leave that comment in the next 24 hours. Don't forget, next week we will be talking about our Earth Day challenge. It's always my favorite time of the year because I love talking about sustainability and the way Cotton Cuts keeps textiles out of the waste stream. And don't forget, our Wild West Big Reveal is going to be on April 25th at 1 o'clock Central Daylight Time. Set your calendars now. You are not going to want to miss that fantastic show. All right. That's it for me, gang. I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave your comments. Make sure you guys tell all your people about this because I like talking about patterns. Maybe you guys have shared some tips and tricks that might help other people, and that's always fantastic. That is it for me, gang. Have a fantastic week, and we will see you guys next week. Bye now. And cut. Thank you so much for watching our video. We have so much fun making these, and we hope that you were both delighted and inspired by what you just watched. This video was sponsored by Cotton Cuts. Cotton Cuts is your one stop for all the best fabric and thread memberships. Love fabric? We've got you covered. Love thread? We've got you covered. We get that no two quilters are cut from the same cloth, which is why our memberships are as unique as you. We also have the largest block of the month in the world. Over 4,000 detectives solve our puzzle mystery quilts every year, and you can join them. Simply go to cottoncuts.com to learn more about all the awesome and fun things that we're doing. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to make sure you get all of our new fresh content every time it comes out. Thank you so much. Happy sewing enthusiasts, and we will see you soon. Bye now.